so I can communicate with you also without having to check the screen of my phone all the time. So, yes. What? 5 hours? I haven't been 5 hours on this live stream. Something's weird's going on with YouTube today. But in any case, it's YouTube's business to figure out why their platform isn't working properly. I've been online for only less than 2 minutes, but it says here I've been on there for more than 5 hours and 21 minutes. Okay. YouTube has some things to fix. Evelyn Demetria, thank you for being here. Curly Girl, thank you for being here. Maria Garcia, thank you for being here. Yes. Okay. That is good. So, okay. How are you all today? How's your day? Let me know. I'll just wait for people to come in. Just tell me how you are. Okay. Yeah, people are good. People are blessed. My day's been long, but I'm alive and blessed. I'm not gonna complain. Okay. So, this live stream, what is the purpose of it? So Maria Garcia, thank you for your prayers. I'm doing well over here. Dang what? Thank you for being here. I'm using the usernames of the YouTube profiles over here. And for many of you that come here to watch, it's good that you're using a nickname, not your real name, because you have some very disturbing stalkers here on YouTube. Some even want to find out your address through hacking, all of that, want to look you up. So good that some of you are using your not your real name. Some of you do use your real name, it's not a problem. But some of you, if you think it's better to use a nickname, please. Not everyone has the same type of cover as I have, that I can just put myself really out there and nobody dares to come near. So, okay, that's that. And okay, this live stream. The reason I make this live stream is because a lot of people are talking about the Great Reset. And there are many conspiracy theories out about the Great Reset. There are documentaries out there. Uh, uh, that talk about the reset, what reset may be. So people talk about the Great Reset, saying that this whole COVID-19 pandemic is all about enforcing the Great Reset that has to take place around 2030. Some people are referring to the Chinese point system. So I want to address what a societal reset is. I've did it already in the past in several videos in 2019. Okay, and it's one of those videos I said that I foresaw that things going to escalate coming decade, and 2020 indeed things escalated. It escalated far quicker than I ever realized. So, what is a societal reset? A societal reset is anytime a society collapses because their violence catches up with them. Let me take this off. Anytime a society's violence catches up with that society, the society collapses. So when society is about to collapse, the leaders of that society and the wealthy people and some of the rest of the commoners who are alert, they will relocate their financial and economic assets so that when the collapse happens, their assets are secured so that when the collapse is happening, they can now reinstall the same society but under a different name or under a different flag. That is what a societal reset is. So it's the old thing that is restored, but it's in a different fashion. So if you had this oligarchy that was oppressing the people, now you have the same oligarchy again, but of course it's a generation later, so it's the descendants of the previous oligarchs. But now the name of the country is different. You have a different flag, or now people have some more civil liberties. So there's some make-up change here and there, but it's the same thing happening. And the collapse was just used to reinstall the old again. That is what a societal reset is. And a societal reset is also called a revolution. Now, I want you to understand the following. A revolution can mean two things: a real change for the better that suddenly happens, or a reinstallment of the old. In human history, historians will admit to you that most of the time people talk about a revolution, it's a reinstallment of the old. The Haitian Revolution was an exemption when there was something broken down for something completely different. But most revolutions or societal resets are just in the reinstallment of the old. That's all they're doing. So before I continue, do you understand what a societal reset is? Or what a revolution is? Let me know in the live chat. Got my tablet so I can check what you're saying. Hold on. Okay, people understand it. So that's a good sign. So a societal reset can be a positive thing if it's genuine for improvement. But most societal resets, or you can say revolutions, are just a reinstallment of the old. And here's the thing: if a revolution is genuine, then there is a real improvement that takes place on the long term for a population. If the revolution is not actually there to benefit the people, but just to preserve the old into the next generations, it's also called revolution. Historians call both revolutions. Both are societal resets. But do you have a few who are genuine, and all the others are just make-up changes. So you have real change for the better, and you have make-up changes. When a woman puts on makeup, she's beautifying her face. Okay? Her face did not actually change, because once the makeup is off, you see her raw face. And sometimes the makeup makes her unrecognizable. Some women, you see them without makeup, then you see them with makeup, you think it's two different individuals. They really don't look alike. So the makeup causes you to perceive them differently than how they really are. And because you may not recognize them with makeup on, you may think they're someone different. Well, the same way it happens in human history. When a society's violence catch up with it, and society cannot dump freely anymore, when they can't just escape anymore, the collapse happens. And when collapse happens, people want to go back to the old. And often the old comes back, but with a little bit of makeup on. So people in the first generation after the revolution don't realize, hold on a minute, it's the same old crap that's happening right now, but we think it's something different. A big example of this was the French Revolution. The French Revolution is promoted as this big improvement in human history. What really happened? Yet the Kingdom of France, who lost most of its colonial territories in North America in 1763. Spain increased, the French only were left with a tiny island in Canada, which they have till this day, and they were left with Saint Dominique, which today we call Haiti. They were left with Martinique, Guadeloupe, and some islands in the Caribbean, with French Guiana. Those were the only things the French were left with. France used to dominate North America, but now, since 1763, it's all gone. Spain now dominated North America. And look at this. The Kingdom of France back then didn't function properly. First of all, many people in that country didn't even speak French. They spoke the regional languages. And the whole idea of being a Frenchman wasn't even something real, because you just had people that spoke French, and the fashion of the French Bourbon dynasty, the same dynasty that governed the Spanish Empire, was this effeminate, sodomite fashion where men wore wigs. That's why in some countries till this day, the judges wear wigs in the courthouses. That comes from the Bourbonic dynasty. That's why during that era, many of the men wear wigs, they wear makeup, they're quite effeminate. That was what the Bourbonic dynasty did. So at some point, the public, the people that lived in France, which was the most populous place of Europe, it was not only in France, but people in Europe in general had enough. And also in the rest of the world, people had enough of that effeminate style of the Bourbonic dynasty. Because remember, Spain governed the world back then as a confederacy of kingdoms, and both the Spanish Empire as well as France were governed by the Bourbon dynasty. Now, in France, the French people were fed up with this effeminate culture. And in this effeminate culture, they were exploited. And here's the thing, the violence against the French public catched up with the French leaders or the Bourbon dynasty. And it led to mass riots, and the French public began to kill one another. It was a very, very horrible time. So French society collapsed. And when French society collapsed, the rest of Europe began to collapse also. So, what happened? When the escalation of violence escalated to the Netherlands, the Dutch people kicked out the Prince of Orange in 1795, because in France, riots were going on for years by now. Clint Stewart, thank you for your super chats, well appreciated. So when this was going on for years in France, you know, they decapitated King Louis XVI, and Queen Marie Antoinette was also decapitated. So France fell into a cycle of killing their own people. It really escalated. So why did they escalate so much? Because people were so fed up with this effeminate nonsense forced upon them. But when people revolted against the effeminate nonsense, they had nothing else to replace it with. So the Roman Catholic system, or the Vatican, came with another puppet from Corsica. Back then, it was already French territory, but where Italians lived there. So there was this Italian guy, Napoleon Bonaparte, who changed his last name to Bonaparte to sound more French. He had assistance from the Vatican, and he reorganized reorganized France. France used to be a kingdom, suddenly became a republic, and it was very chaotic. Slavery was abolished also, which was a good thing. Even the English people were happy with that. But then, remember, at the same time that those white folks in France were rioting, it gave opportunity for the blacks in Saint-Dominique, which Drake to revolt. So the Haitian Revolution began, and they continued to riot and to revolt over and over again till they got the recognition. Till the French Republic said, okay, slavery is abolished, period. When Napoleon came, the people in France noticed that everything went backwards, and they wanted back the stability that was before. But they didn't want that effeminate expression anymore. So Napoleon didn't wear wigs. He was shaven like the ancient Romans did. So he came with this masculine makeup for the French, for the French people, and people loved it. But here's the thing: shortly afterwards, Napoleon was crowned emperor. He became king of Italy, and he began to reorganize the whole of Europe. Why? Because Europe could not function anymore according to the aristocratic feudal system, because that thing didn't work properly. But here's the thing: the French people realized very quickly this Napoleon was actually not an improvement at all. He only agreed with the public against this effeminate culture that people were fed up with. But he didn't actually replace it with anything better. In fact, Napoleon was worse, because Napoleon depleted the public of their finances and their wealth. Napoleon started wars that he couldn't win. And here's the thing: Napoleon was very racial. He wanted to bring back slavery. And he wanted to enforce slavery back on the black folks of Saint-Dominique. But here's the thing: when Napoleon sent his navy, a black leader from the Haitian Revolution smacked down the navy of Napoleon. It was a big, big blow to Napoleon's ego and the ego of the French public. White folks in general back then, it was a big blow to them that these Negroes who used to be slaves smacked them down. A European navy was smacked down by Haitians. Okay? So when this happened, people turned on Napoleon. Now, to distract from what happened, Napoleon turned his attention to the Germans. And Napoleon smacked the Germans. And even in France, the people telling Napoleon, leave the Germans alone. But Napoleon continued, and Napoleon made Berlin the capital of all the German people. Because Germany as a country don't exist. You have different German kingdoms, German countries here and there. He made that Berlin was the capital of all Germans. Still to this day, Berlin is the capital for the German people. Okay? So when this was going on, Britain at the time had a blockade towards continental Europe, and Napoleon also had a blockade against the British Empire. So there was this big collapse that went on. But remember, all wars are hoaxes. Now the Civil War was a real thing. People were fed up and people went off at each other. So what happened was that the Vatican realized, okay, we cannot continue this aristocratic feudal system anymore. And those black folks, we can't continue to keep them in chains because many of them are free already, and the slave folks are increasing. And despite being slaves, they are the economic power of our world system. So we need to reset how we do things so that we can continue doing the same thing but in a different way. So Napoleon was the agent to destroy how things were done to later bring it back under new form. That's what Napoleon was meant to do. And here's the thing. He made blunder after blunder. And why? Because he was never designed. His position was never designed to succeed to begin with. He was there. He was the fool that was appointed to destroy what was left of the French people and of Europe so that now the liberal era would begin. And here's the thing. Napoleon's biggest mistake was invade Spain, because that was a very big failure. The Spanish people continued their empire through Cadiz. But here's the thing. From that point on, the Spanish Empire was in trouble because under the liberal era they wanted to enforce black folks had to be recognized as full Spanish citizens. And here's the thing, man, those white supremacists in Spanish America, they don't want to have blacks to be equal Spanish citizens under a liberal constitution. So this prospect caused them to riot. Since 1810, they've been rioting in Mexico, in what do they call Buenos Aires, in Guayaquil. They were rioting. They were destroying everything. 1812, the Constitution came, and the Constitution, nobody wanted it. A year later, the Spanish king was restored to the throne. He took charge again, and he abolished the Constitution, the liberal Constitution. And he restored everything back how it was before. Because none of the people, both in Spain nor in the Americas, wanted this liberal constitution. But those years, 1810 to 1814, revealed something very ugly in the Spanish Empire. The riots were so intense that in the area we today call Colombia, which back then was Nueva Granada, New Granada, for 2 years there was no Spanish government because the white supremacists were destroying everything because they were thinking, no, if those niggers become full Spanish citizens, then they become very powerful. Well, the Spanish Empire was built on the back of black slaves to begin with. So they had most of the knowledge in navigation, in farming, and in mining and all of that. So, of course, if a liberal constitution would come, the black Spaniards would be quite dominant. And those white Spanish Americans, they did not contribute that much to what's going on in the empire. So it would be the Native Americans of the natives of the Americas, indigenous people, and the blacks would win, and the white Spaniards, who were a tiny minority, would lose their significance. So they began to riot. And the Viceroyalty of New Granada, which was how Colombia was called before independence, from 1810 till 1812, history books are quite silent because the white folks were rioting over there. They were turning on black folks. They were committing massacres. They were out of line. There was a new viceroy appointed by the Spanish government to take over, but while the ship arrived at Puerto Rico, other Spanish officers told the viceroy, "You're not going to New Granada because you'll likely be killed over there because those folks have lost their minds." So he was redirected to Mexico. In early 1813, the Spain sent on the Navy, and the Navy smacked down those white supremacists who were rioting and restored order. Okay, so that period caused a lot of trauma. Tens of thousands of people lost their lives in race riots over there. So this wound was so big that all over the world realized, what's going on here? And here's the thing: in December 1813, when King Ferdinand VII was restored to the Spanish throne, he was aware of all these things. Most of the people just wanted to go back to how things were. He abolished the liberal constitution. But here's the thing: those white supremacists destroyed the world's economy because Spain dominated the world's economy. The Spanish dollar, or in Spain, Real de Ocho, the coin of 8, was the dominant world currency. Everyone worldwide calculate their international transactions in Spanish real or Spanish dollars. Acapulco was an important harbor where merchandise from Asia came in. In the Netherlands, you have those blue scales, those white scales decorated with blue illustrations. They're called Delft's Blauw in Dutch, or Delft blue in English. Sometimes some people call it Berlin blue. You can find online. You have those Chinese decorations of white tableware with blue paint on it, which was quite popular in colonial times. It's part of Dutch heritage today. It was possible due to the Spanish Empire. Why do we have chocolate in many dishes worldwide today? Because of the Spanish Empire. Why do we have potatoes and fries in many dishes worldwide due to the Spanish Empire? Why does the Italian cuisine have tomatoes in it a lot? Because of the Spanish Empire. Because Spain also dominated Italy at the same time. In some areas, you have corn that's used a lot in dishes, also here in Korea. The Spanish Empire is where influence came from. So the Spanish Empire was a dominant empire back then, and everyone wanted to be part of it. They were stable. The Spanish American white supremacists, they destroyed Acapulco. They burnt down the harbor. They burnt down place in Guayaquil. They've lost their minds. So after May of 1814, where everything continued, those white supremacists were humiliated, and they began to write again and again. And now they wanted, in around 1819, they began to murmur and complain. They said, "We want to get this constitution back. We want independence, but we want to be independent in a liberal way." And the Spanish king was thinking, none of you wanted to cut this constitution, and it never worked out. Some generals in Spain pushed the king to put back this constitution while negotiating independence. So the king did this. He sent commissioners to negotiate independence all over the place, and the white supremacists began to play stupid. The Mexican revolutionaries began to plunder, rape, and do all these things in North America while still negotiating independence. What they did to San Salvador back then, oh Lord, that's horrible. So all this was going on. 1823, the French intervened in Spain, and the Spanish king realized, okay, these people are just taking advantage of me. He called back all the commissioners, and he allowed Spanish America to collapse. Only Puerto Rico, Cuba remained, and the Philippines and Asia remained also. Argentina and Chile negotiated independence before already. Now, why am I repeating this history to you is to show you that when this reset was going on in the early 19th century, it went very chaotic. Because the reset implied that the slavery had to be abolished, and now corporate enterprises had to become dominant. And the white supremacists in Spanish America didn't want this, because if corporations become dominant, in Central America, a lot of blacks would be able to have their own corporations. So they didn't want to have black folks getting an upper hand. So they destroyed the Spanish America with civil wars. They impoverished themselves and their offspring. And now you had Mexico, Chile, Argentina, Peru, all those countries, and you couldn't travel freely between the countries, so all the black folks scattered around were also stuck. Just to stuck black folks, they prefer to destroy the whole Spanish Empire and to limit themselves through civil wars. And that's why, till this day, Latin America is so messed up. I already explained before on the live stream. I've explained to you right now. The rest of the world got along with the reset much better. So you had this liberal era that also brought forth the era where the British Empire became dominant. And that continued till the Second World War, which also escalated. So now you have the American era. So when you see now, anytime worldwide you have this collapse that happens because the finance catch up, they'll seek to shift it around very quickly. So what happened in Spanish America is happening to the United States of America today with the white supremacists. The only reason they haven't destroyed everything yet is, one, because Holy Spirit restrains the situation, and there's a US military that's able to keep them in check for now. But even in the US military, you have many white supremacists who are willing to self-destruct. What happened to Spanish America? A region of stable kingdoms that turned into the hellholes are today. Similar is happening to the United States as a region, right as we speak. So the French Revolution was the collapse of the aristocratic feudalism of the Vatican, and it was shifted into the liberal era. The liberal era eventually, after the Second World War, turned into the capitalist era. And in 2008, the capitalist era collapsed. So another era had to be put in, but the reset has taken too long. That is quite embarrassing now. So now they talk about the Great Reset as if they have this big plan to reset the world. No, the reset should have happened already between 2008 and 2012. We're 2021 now, and there's still no reset that happened. There's a big delay. So a societal reset or a revolution is when the masses are upset and they're dumping, and while they're dumping, things are shifted. There's a make-up change that appears to be a real change, and the same thing happens again. Now, real revolutions real beneficial revolutions do exist, but they are rare. The Haitian Revolution was one of them. There has been a few others, but they're rare. So, societal resets are common. But here's the one thing I want you to understand. When societal resets happen, most of the time people are not aware of it. The French Revolution was later acknowledged as a revolution after the Napoleon era. The Napoleon era, which was just from 1799 till 1815, was really a period of 16 years in which the reset worked itself out. But that complete shift did not happen till the Spanish Empire collapsed in 1826. In 1826, the British Empire took over and they took the lead now in the world. The reset already happened, and Spain still has the was on top. 1826, Britain took over, and Spanish America remained in a mess till this day. Now, normally a reset takes about 2 to 4 years to happen. Then you have another 5 or 8 years when reset works out. That was Napoleon era, 1799 till 1815. Yeah, the reset actually happened somewhere around 1799, 1802. That was the reset. And now it still had to work out, and the working out happened later in the decade. And in the second decade, it was complete. So people now were used to the new situation. In earlier resets, things happened within just a year. When the Dutch Empire collapsed, 1672, the Spanish went on very quickly, and there was not much to do about it. So resets are always very short, but people need to get used to it. And then you have the years, maybe sometimes a decade, people get used to the quote-unquote new situation, which is not really that new to begin with. So that is what's going on now. You have a reset that's been taking way too long. 2008 to 2021, how many years are that? 10, 12, 13 years. A reset of 13 years, that's way too long. So why is this reset so long? It is because this reset is quite humiliating. Because they taught the youth under the influence of the United States that capitalism is the ultimate form of economy, that there is none better than it. Even though since the 19th century, when capitalism came up, people like Karl Marx already said that things going to collapse. And after the Cold War, they declared capitalism the winner. Even though what they had under the Soviet Union wasn't even communism to begin with, but that's a different thing. So now the capitalism has shown to have collapsed. They are too proud to admit we've lied to you. They're too proud to admit we need to go to some socialist regime just to make sure things can become stable again. They don't want to admit this. So they thought 2008 to 2012, Obama's presidency, you will have Islamic economics that will take over, and thus the capitalism will slowly die off, and Islamic economics will take over, and nobody would ask any questions. That didn't happen because there was no Islamic leadership back then to do it. It still isn't to this day. Even though that's the aim that they're hoping for, but 2008, 2021, that's a very big delay. And during this delay, more things began to collapse than they wanted. So there's a big humiliation of historical proportions. And that's why now they prefer to let everything completely crash, and then they push very quickly another program when people are completely desperate. That is what they're doing right now. Mhm. So do you understand what this great reset they're talking about is really about? Let me know in the live chat. So the great reset is really that great. It's really the world's leaders hiding their embarrassment that the reset didn't happen smoothly within Obama's first presidency, and how it further collapsed, and they lost their grip on the situation. So it's really a form of damage control. It's really a form of saving face that they're doing right now. And that's good news, because that shows you that they are not in control. That shows you that the prayers of the saints are effective. And that shows you that pagan Christianity is the enemy for us. Because pagan Christianity kept on telling us, oh, the chip is coming. First it was a supercomputer, then it was a super soldier, then it was the RFID chip, now it became the vaccine. Pagan Christianity always comes with some propaganda of fear to trap you as a believer. Okay? And here's the thing, you are a spirit being, your body is a physical extension. Okay? This body is mortal and will pass away, and you will get an immortal body when Christ returns. You're still a human because you are the human being. The body is just an extension. So whatever they do with the body doesn't change that you are a human being. So if you're born again, whatever they do with the body, whatever crap they put in it, it's not going to change that you're born again. Now, it will harm the body. You shouldn't allow that to happen, but no microchip and no vaccine, whatever, can undo your humanity, don't change your salvation. And if an unbeliever, his body is ruined and they want to receive Christ, they can still receive Christ. So many of churches are putting out fear propaganda out there to paralyze you as a believer. Their attitude is, oh dear, soon the chip is coming, or soon the vaccines come, soon those passports are coming, so you can't buy and eat, or we're all going to die, or maybe you need to sell out, maybe we have to take 66. They are losing it. But Christ said, I gave you power to trample on scorpions and serpents and the whole camp of the enemy. So those 13 bloodlines of the Illuminati, the Apollonians, those wizards and warlocks, and whatever plan they come up with, those are part of the enemy's camp. And Christ has given us power to tread upon scorpions and serpents and the whole camp of the enemy. Not a part of it, the whole camp of it. You okay? So if you have been given power, if we've been given power to tread upon all their stupid plans, then why are we so afraid of some of their projects? A lot of believers are so afraid of those projects that we forget the promises given to us that are valid for here and now. Those pagan churches talk more about the mark of the beast, and they don't even properly explain to you what it is. They talk more about they're more into making you afraid for the mark of the beast than they are in promoting you walking by faith. And the mark of the beast is really a sign that someone is turning reprobate. The mark in the forehead is really a reprobate way of thinking, and the mark in the right hand is really the reprobate way of thinking that express itself in daily actions. That's what it is. And the image of the beast is this image of whiteness, which is the skin tone of Apollo, that belonged to God, which is Sirius Nephilim's son. The number of his name are really the gematria or numerology that's used worldwide by mainstream media, by corporations, and all of it. It's very simple, but the pagan churches can't explain that to you. Instead, let you think, oh, it's a microchip. Oh, Lord, watch out if you take that chip out there. And I'm thinking, shut the F up, please. Shut up. Either teach God's words, or we walk by faith and are powerful, or don't mention his name at all, but don't use his name in vain, putting us under a spell of fear. Now look, the world wants to put physical marks on you, but they can't get away putting a physical mark on everyone. They know they can't get away with it. But the pagan church uses this threat of a physical mark to keep you in fear. That's what they're doing. So, now we know what the Great Reset is. Just them covering their behinds. Now we know what it's not, Now we are freed from that fear porn that's out there. Now we can address the bad things that are going on in a constructive way, and we can continue doing the will of the Heavenly Father on the earth. Is that not good news, believers? That now we can continue doing the will of the Heavenly Father without being paralyzed by the fear propaganda of those pagan churches? And that shows that those pagan churches are working for Satan. They're not doing the will of the Heavenly Father. And the reason I explained the history of the Spanish Empire is to show you that what goes on now with the white supremacists in the United States and the Western world, it's already been played out in the Spanish Empire. And look at what's left of Spanish America, today called Latin America. The same will happen with the Western world. They will go down. And just like the Spanish Americans allowed it to happen, folks in the West allowed it to happen now also. It's later generations, it's a later century, it is almost 2 centuries later, but it's the same conflict playing out. They don't want black folks to succeed, so in order to prevent black folks succeed, they rather destroy themselves and ruin the future of both themselves and their offspring, as long as they can have the pride that they can look down on those niggers. That's what they want. And in Spanish America, they did it, and look today, Latin America is a mess, haunted by drug cartels, haunted by poverty, and they have become a laughingstock of the world for almost 2 centuries. The same will happen to the United States and to some extent to Europe also. So, are you free now from that fear propaganda concerning the Great Reset? Are you free now? Good. That is what you need to understand. Societal resets, most of the time, the exceptions are rare. The exceptions are powered by believers, but often even the exceptions by believers is hijacked later by pagans, like the Haitian Revolution. In the Haitian Revolution, you have this pagan that took over, and he turned Haiti into a voodoo center eventually. But okay, despite that, the Haitian Revolution at least was had a real benefit for blacks worldwide. So what you need to know is that in general, in societal resets or revolutions, people are not aware it's going on till it's too late. And the people that are alert have already relocated their assets. So what should we do now as believers? There is no millennial reign of Christ. What you read in Revelation chapter 20 is as follows. Those 1,000 years is really an expression. In ancient Greece, if something would take a very long time, would say 1,000 years. Just 1,000 years. Just to refer to it would take a long time. So the period of 1,000 years is just a symbolic expression for a very long time. And that very long time is from the moment Christ was risen till the day Christ returns. If you want to call it a millennial reign, that is a millennial reign. From the moment Christ was risen till the day Christ returns. And at the end of that period, right before Christ returns, when the world is collapsing completely, now, because believers by now, in general, are too into false teachings, Satan has a leverage that appears as if he's been released. And now he will use that leverage to retaliate completely against the tribe of Judah, who have now been recovered. And during this retaliation, Christ will return. That is the truth about the thing called the millennial reign. So, if you don't know that the ancient Greeks used to say 1,000 years just because something took long, and you read 1,000 years, you think, oh, the literal 1,000 years going to come. Lack of knowledge. So, I was always confused when church would say it's going to be 1,000 years of peace. And I read that that's the first resurrection happens within those 1,000 years. And those that took part of the first resurrection, they're free from the second death. That is the lake of fire. And I was thinking, but aren't people becoming born again now? Isn't that the first resurrection? Because the first resurrection is just you becoming born again. The second resurrection is when you get your immortal body. So even when you read the context, you realize, okay, there is no literal 1,000 years after Christ returns, the thousands of years, or it's really not literal thousands of years, it's the long period between Christ's resurrection till it comes back. That's the long time in which God's kingdom works out throughout the generations. Everyone who's born again then has taken part in the first resurrection. But all believers have taken part in the first resurrection. And the second resurrection for us is when we get our immortal bodies. Unbelievers don't have a first resurrection, only have one resurrection. That's the resurrection of their immortal bodies, but they're dying twice. Mm-hmm. And this is what you need to know. This period of the New Testament between Christ's resurrection and his second coming is when the saints are in charge. What is a saint? A saint is a believer that operates in the power. The believer operating in the power is a saint. And the saints are in charge now. So that's why you have pagan Christianity that seeks to prevent believers from graduating into sainthood, that means operating in the power. That's why they come with things like the millennial reign of 1,000 years. They come with the rapture. They come with all those weird teachings just to prevent believers from getting involved in the power. Because once believers get involved in the power, they are saints and now they are in charge. So the only way the powers of darkness can continue with a grip on mankind is by sabotaging believers into validating, into enabling them. And that's what the Catholic system is about. So it's the saints who are in charge. And the Apollonians in the Vatican, with all their drug cartels, all the crap they're doing, they know it very well. That's why many of them pretend to be on our side. They pretend to be believers too, just to sabotage us into enabling them. So believers, or better said saints, because not every believer is a saint. A saint is a believer that operates in the power. So saints, listen, we are the ones in charge around here. This YouTube channel is a ministry for the saints. Believers learn to graduate into sainthood, but it's for the saints. Because till Christ returns, we'll be in charge. Yes, it's going to be a short period. I know if that is, some people say it's 7 years, literally, which is also not true. I don't know how long it's going to be, whether it's 10 years or maybe 70 years or maybe a century. I don't know how long. It's going to be a brief moment out of that long period in which the enemy has a big leverage again, and he's going to retaliate severely against the tribe of Judah. Okay? Because the tribe of Judah has to recover, and once they recover, now the rest of mankind is blessed. And in the last, that's why in the last time, the enemy will retaliate fiercely again. And soon this retaliation, that Christ returns. But the tribe of Judah still needs to recover, as we speak, right at this moment. And once they recover, then the retaliation will come. That's why you have all these deceptions of the new age about this age of Aquarius or the new reset. All of that is all to distract people into false teaching, so that the enemy has a base for his retaliation in the future. So, what do we do now that the revolution is going on? We enforce abundance in our circumstances, and we make sure that our grip on the economies around us increase. That's what we need to do right now. I already explained what the mark of the beast is earlier in this live stream. It's a spiritual sign someone is turning into a reprobate. Mark in the forehead is simply a reprobate way of thinking. Mark in the right hand is the reprobate thinking breaking out in daily actions. So, it's very obvious now what we have to do. We need to increase our financial grip on the communities that we're in.
No, frankly, I heard that.
We have to do it.
She was talking.
If we don't do it, we as individual saints are going to miss out on opportunities.
And Jack told me
There are going to be things anyway that will take advantage. I want you to take advantage too.
She's not gonna she's not gonna leave. So if Jack told me just leave it and he's gonna talk to her tomorrow.
Mhm. So do you know now what you have to do, believers?
She moved to 405. I heard that she doesn't want to move 405.
Yeah, like at being sure, like, no, I'm sleeping. Then I asked the girl, Adriana, okay, move at least for tonight. She said,
Do you know what you have to do now?
And then the girl was like, okay, can I go? Because like she fucking cried and shit.
You are a saint. That means you're a believer operating in power. Walk like saints, operate like saints. Take charge. That is what we ought to do. This is what we ought should be doing anyway. So stop hoping about some rapture that will not ever happen. Stop waiting on the millennium race. Stop waiting on all the nonsense pagan Christianity lied to you about. As saints, take charge now. Because you live now. Because either the saints take charge or the enemy keeps smacking folks around. Good. But I don't have to talk much here because I already said what I need to say. Thank you for the super chat, for the one that gave it. And keep walking by faith, and I'll see you in the next live stream. Saints.